Hey guys, I'm Benny Bees. Welcome to the channel. It's 2026. It is the beginning of March, and we're going to go and check out my beehives for the first time since winter. All right, so we're getting our smoker going, which is good. It's a little windy today, but it is 75 and sunny, so perfect day for activity. Once I get my gloves on and everything here, I'll kind of take you guys around to the front of the hive and you can see what kind of activity we're getting. Really, the biggest thing in the spring that I like to do here, it's March, what is it, 5th, 4th, something like that. We are checking to make sure that the hives made it through winter. They had feed on all of these hives through the winter, so really what I'm just looking at is making sure they all three have a queen and that they are healthy and bringing in pollen, which will really activate the queen to start laying more as the weather temps get warmer. So we'll get our smoker going here, and let me take you around to the front of the hives. So you can kind of see we got some activity. What the bees are mostly doing here in the spring, now that the weather is warmer, is they're doing a big giant cleanup of the hive. So hives are full of dead bees. They usually fall to the bottom. A lot of waste, comb, pests throughout the winter just fall to the bottom, and so they're cleaning all that out, as well as foragers are starting to bring nectar and pollen in. And so each of these hives has different activity levels. They're all doing their thing of cleaning out, and this guy's actually got a top bar or a top entrance here, so but you can kind of see they've got pollen all bringing in here, which is awesome. So we're going to open these up and you guys can kind of look and see what I look for. You'll notice on all of my hives I kind of wrap them with this black insulation paper. This is actually paper that roofers use on their shingles underneath, and it keeps moisture out, but it also sucks up all of the sunlight that could possibly get there in the winter and helps insulate from the wind while also keeping heat in there. Top of every single hive, I put a couple different layers of insulation. Just helps keep the heat as much as possible inside the hive through the winter. Our daytime temps here in the month of March for the next couple of weeks look to be pretty warm, 60s and 70s and 50s, swinging in and out, but our nighttime temps are dropping into like the 30s and 40s still. So I'm going to keep the insulation on the outside. I probably will take all of this insulation off the top. They are only going to be getting bigger in the next couple of weeks of population, which will help them keep heat. So we probably don't need this insulation on the top anymore. So I'm going to be taking all of these out. So these jars that are in here are for feed. This is sugar water mixed with a little bit of pollen substitute, just mixed in a jar and turned upside down. And there's little screens in here, so the bees can actually poke their tongues or their proboscis through that and actually access the sugar water and take it right down into the hive. So I do this usually early in like January, February, after they've kind of managed to eat a lot of the sugar boards. So I replace those sugar boards that lay on the top of here with the liquid feed once the temperatures start to be a little bit warmer and we're not in like single digits anymore. So we'll take this off just so I can lift this off here, but they've probably got about 25-30% of that, but it is filled with sugar water and pollen. So we'll move that off. Let me grab a hive tool. So technically this is not my first inspection of the year after winter. I did pop in here about a week or two ago to drop in some mite treatment strips. So I use Apivar to treat my bees. One of the hives had a decent mite count on the bottom board. through winter, so I was like, I'll just go ahead and treat them all. They're all in close proximity here. So that's what these little strips are right here. They're going to stay in here until April the 1st. So about 45 days is the amount of time they're supposed to stay in there. So really all I'm doing today is just checking to make sure queen is laying and everything looks healthy in the rest of the colony. So I always try my best to start on the outside and remove a frame on the outside, because the queen is probably most likely somewhere in these middle 4 or 5, and it just decreases the possibility of me damaging or killing her, which is extremely bad timing to do at the beginning of spring, because most places are not going to be selling queens for replacements for several more weeks. Usually mid-April is when that can happen, so I cannot afford to not have a queen right now. So these outside frames are going to be mostly empty. Through the winter, the hive clusters in the middle, and so everything on the outside is either just honey or empty frames that they just haven't used or gotten to yet. So I'm just going to be removing them or sliding them out of the way. So this one's got tons of like liquid. This is either like fresh nectar, or they're possibly just storing some of the feed in the jar that I was giving them. And a lot of times when they have it like this in the spring this early, and they're not capping it or don't have a ton of bees on it, they're just storing it to use it very quickly. So I noticed that was very thin that they put in there because I spilled it all over the rest of the frames. So this one still has lots of honey on it, also nectar on this side, and you can see capped over honey right there. So good sign that they still had plenty of food through the winter, and did not necessarily need the sugar board, but I always like to have it because it works as a multifunctional resource for them, of giving them food while also taking away a lot of the moisture that would be in the hive, and moisture is no bueno in the wintertime. Alright, we'll take this one out as well. So this frame looks awesome. Up here in the top left-hand corner next to the strip, they've got tons and tons of pollen stored, and that is like fresh pollen that they've been bringing in the last month. And in between, or like all around the center of that, where the cluster of the bees are, is fresh eggs and larvae that the queen has laid. I don't see the queen on this frame, but that's okay. But she has laid eggs all on this top little corner here, and they've got tons of pollen. So really cool to see that. That means we do have an active queen in here, which is great. Another thing you want to be careful of in the springtime when you're opening up your hives for the first time and looking to see if you have a queen or if she's laying, you have to really be careful of not chilling the brood. So they have to keep brood at 90 to 95% degrees to keep them healthy and growing properly. And if you chill it too early in the development phase, it will kill the brood, and that entire thing that she just laid will be done for. So we want to be careful not to chill the brood. Even though our temps are 75 right now, we're probably fine. I don't want to keep brood out and about for very long. So here's a frame that is, they've got tons of honey, capped over honey here on this like bottom area, and then they've got some pollen. That's what that yellow is in there. And then right here next to the strip is capped over brood. So you can see there's like tiny white little I mean, those are larvae. That's like larva that's growing that eventually will be capped over. So we've got all full stages of brood. We've got eggs, larva, and capped over brood, and so that is exactly the sign we want to see at this stage of the spring, and she is ramping up her laying. So I don't see the queen yet on here, but that's okay. She is laying like a monster right now on several frames, so that's a good sign. And she's just slowly working across the colony here. So I imagine that means she's probably on this next frame, if I am estimating correctly. This one's really heavy too, so we've got tons of honey, capped over honey here. Really great sign through the winter. My gosh, this is a really heavy frame. And there is our beautiful queen. And so she has a blue dot on there, really easy for me to find and see her. Beekeepers use different colored dots to signify how old she is. So blue dots, for beekeepers' notes here, 0s and 5s were blue, and so 1s and 6s for the calendar of the year. So 2026 ends in a 6. So white is the color for any queens that are born in 2026. So if she does die or we replace her or anything like that, we will use a white dot. But she looks like she's gonna do just fine. She's laying, and she's got plenty of room. So there she is. So I've seen her, I've seen enough here. I really actually didn't need to officially see her. I was going to be okay not seeing her, even though I saw tons and tons of brood. So we'll put everything back the way it was here. Let me get this strip out of here. So we'll slide everything back over, but that's a good sign. Queen is doing well. Okay. Put the strip back in here, right down in the middle where the colony is. And we'll just move everything back. Goodness. A really good sign for this particular hive is they've got plenty of room to expand. She's not like running out of room or anything, so we're not really quite yet in the stage of like worrying about swarming or anything. So maybe if we get a little bit closer into the later parts of April, March and then into April, we might consider splitting this one, but we'll see how she does here in the next couple of weeks. But overall, good to see. I'm going to put everything back the way I found it. So this is their feeding board. Slide that back on there. And we'll put this, maybe mix it up here. The suction. And there we go. All right. Put our top box back on just to cover up that feeding thing. I'm going to take the insulation out as well. And we'll just do that. Okay. And we'll put our top cover back on, and then I use bricks to just weigh down. These plastic ones are really light, so I don't like to do that. Luckily, I didn't have to use my smoke at all for that, so we'll move on to the next hive. Little history about this middle hive here. So I've technically got 4 hives back here. I've got 1, 2, 3, and then I've got a horizontal hive. Horizontal hive is totally different than these 3 Langstroth hives. So all of the equipment and frames and size and everything is just totally different with that hive. So I always have to check and work that hive a little bit differently than I do these 3. So most of the time when I'm like talking about the hives back here, I'm talking about these 3. My horizontal hive is just a special one. All right, so we'll open up this one, but as I was mentioning earlier, a little history about this hive. This is my oldest hive, and technically my oldest queen. They are massive. Last year they came through winter, which was awesome, and they swarmed twice in the spring. I don't literally know how that's possible, but they did. And so I split them twice also, including them swarming. So awesome. These guys are eating a lot more of the sugar water. They've almost got about 50% or 30% of that remaining, which is really good. So, but this colony is much bigger, and you'll see that right when I open up their box here. So far, I'm actually kind of surprised how calm the bees are today with how windy it is. Usually with it being a little slightly cloudy and windy, bees get a little bit anxious or testy about that, but awesome, looking good. So you can see this colony has a lot more bees. There's tons of activity in like 8 of the frames here. We've got bees all the way across. So what that tells me is they've just got more population, more numbers, and more activity going on. And so what we'll do is we'll start at this end and we'll take out probably 2 frames, and then we'll work our way this way. I'm guessing the queen's probably somewhere in these spots where I've put the strips, which is on purpose. So we'll start here at the end. And they've got some mold on these frames over here, and mostly that is because there's just a lot of moisture in the hive right now, as well as not a lot of activity of bees over on this side of the colony. So I might replace those at some point, not right now, but that might be something to just keep an eye on. Bees are really good at keeping their hive extremely clean. They love to clean. That's like #1 thing about bees. They love to clean and they love to build. They take care of their location and where they live very good. So I don't need to do a ton of cleaning for them, but sometimes comb and frame just gets really old and they don't have the means to replace full comb. But I do for them, so I can do that. So we might just replace some of those frames eventually, but not right now. Okay. So now we're getting a little bit closer to the hive population, the colony of where they're kind of setting up camp, and we've got a lot of like really thin nectar, possibly from my syrup that I've given them on these frames. So we'll slide those down and continue to move a little bit closer. Lots of nectar, really good to see. So I mentioned at the beginning of the video that the temperature's warming up, so they're starting to bring in pollen and nectar. One thing that we can feed them through the winter is pollen and syrup to keep giving them the things that they need. But pollen is the thing that activates the queen or kind of triggers her to start laying more. That is what signifies like temperatures are warming up and spring is coming. And so the more pollen that's being brought in, the queen will lay more because they need pollen to feed brood. And so you can see this frame here is just packed full of fresh pollen that's coming in. This is literally brought in the last like several weeks. It's just a beautiful frame of pollen. And a seasoned beekeeper will tell you, if you see a full frame of pollen, most likely the very next frame is going to have brood on it, because they need that pollen stored right next to the brood, because a lot of baby mouths to feed and they don't want to travel very far in the hive to do that. And so most likely this very next frame will have some brood on it, or plans to have brood on it. So I see some more pollen, which is good. Let's see what the other side looks like here. Yeah, there's the brood. Let me turn this around here. Don't want to flip it because there's a lot of okay. Dang, they're just bringing in so much pollen. Okay, so this is all, let me switch my hand here. Okay, I'm going to step into the sun a little bit so you can see. All beautiful brood. So they've got tons and tons of, this has everything on this frame. This is like picture perfect frame. So they've got brood in the middle, and then a ring around that is going to have all pollen that they're feeding that brood, and then the next ring around that is going to have honey and nectar. So captor honey here in this corner, and then all of the bright yellow and orange, that is all pollen, and then this is the beautiful, beautiful brood. And you can see some baby bees that are poking their heads through and being born, but mostly pretty good laying pattern for the queen. I don't see her on this frame, but that's okay. But you want to see nice consistent laying pattern for your queen. If this was spotty or very, very small and then she jumped over and had another section, that would not be good laying pattern, and we would want to replace that queen, but this looks fine for me. So we'll put this frame back, and I didn't technically see like brand new laid eggs on that, but there's tons of brood. I don't probably need to keep looking here, but for the sake of the video, good grief, so much brood on this. This is beautiful. They are ramping up, getting ready to, oh, yep, they're going to be very angry now. So tons and tons of brood. Don't see any queen cells at the bottom, which is a good sign. Don't see the queen technically, but that's okay. She could just be laying somewhere else, but make sure my queen did not fall out of the hive. That means queen's probably back over here somewhere. Yeah, tons and tons of eggs, tons and tons of pollen. Really good brood pattern right now for her, being picky on how much she's putting on each frame. Cool. Yeah, I've seen enough. I don't need to keep going and looking for her specifically, so we'll just put all of this back. Gosh, this hive produces a ton of propolis, which is like the sticky, waxy stuff that they seal everything with. It's different consistency than the wax that they use to build comb. I'm actually gonna hit them with a little smoke since I disturbed them a little. So smoke calms the bees. They use pheromones to kind of communicate with one another, and that forces that pheromone to not be spread through the air. Okay. I really should do this one frame at a time, I think. Okay. All right, that hive looks good. We'll just put our feeding board back on here on the top. Put our feed. I'll move our insulation. All right, ladies, you're going to be trapped in there if you don't get out. Okay. Cool. That hive looks good. All right. We will move to our... There goes my smoker. Last hive here. Okay, this hive typically is my meanest, and they were actually a swarm that I caught last year, and I was not optimistic about them surviving, but they have pleasantly surprised me and become a very, very strong colony. However, they've always been kind of a little bit mean, so I probably will replace the queen this year at some point, but so far, taking care of this sugar water pretty well. Looks pretty good. Almost got that completely taken care of. I must have already removed the insulation from that one because it didn't have any in there. Oh yeah, because they have an open inner cover here with an open entrance. So really, really active. I'm gonna put this over here. Pop them with some smoke. It's really windy. They're not gonna like that. So this is a beetle trap over here in the bottom left-hand corner. You fill it with oil, and the bees cannot go inside of it, but the beetles can, and they'll be attracted to it, and trap them in there. Hive beetles are the worst, so we will just... It looks like there's only one beetle in there, so I didn't really have a super big problem with that in the wintertime. Strong colonies usually can take care of that, but I always like to be proactive and help them out as much as I can anyway. Alrighty. Yeah, you can just hear how much more mad this hive gets compared to the other hives. I'm going to start on this end here because there's more bees on this side of the hive, I think. So we will remove that. Nothing really on there anyway. Don't think there's anything on that frame. We'll move to the next one. So all of these hives back here are double deeps, which means they have 2 deep boxes going into winter. The reason I'm not checking their bottom box right now, one, in the wintertime, heat rises, so they're typically going to be found in the top box anyway. But as they expand for the spring, they'll eventually use both of these boxes. But right now, there's not enough bees in any of these hives to be using the bottom box. So I don't really have to worry about that right now. Resource frame, so this has all pollen and nectar and capped over honey. This looks like brand new pollen that they've brought in just this week. I mean, it's not, none of those cells are even like fully full of pollen, which is awesome. They're becoming hoarders of it here as flowers bloom in the spring. Alrighty. What are we looking at here? looks like a really good frame of brood and nectar and pollen. I like the look of that. Looks like tons of beautiful larvae growing in. There's the queen. She's just trotting along. And she disappeared. Oh, there she is, popping her head out. She doesn't like the light, so, but she's doing well. Just checking in on everything. Looks to be like a good brood pattern, so I'm not even gonna keep moving along. I'm just gonna close this one up. This hive's doing well, so I'm not gonna spend too much time bothering them. Queen's doing good. Alrighty, so we'll just put this frame back in here. And we will put our inner cover back on. So this inner cover actually has a notch. Because this hive was doing really well population-wise, and they kind of have a weird bottom board, I actually gave them a inner cover that has a top opening because they're bringing in a lot of resources right now. So I didn't want to hinder them, and I will just give them this back. And they'll keep rolling with those resources. Just gonna give them some extra pollen right now. Make sure that's all flush. And we'll close this back up with our top inner cover. And our top cover, and we're good to go. So that's our first spring check of 2026. Queens are all looking great. All the hives are looking good. This is Indy. She's my bee companion and just as allergic to bees as I am. So she gets stung often because she's an idiot and goes and hangs out by the hives. But yeah, hives are looking good. What we'll do is probably here in a couple weeks, we'll jump back into the hives, let them do their thing here for early March. And towards the end of March, we'll assess looking into doing some splits and preventing some swarms. We're going to be expanding the apiary this year and adding a couple other sites where I'll be moving some of those splits and getting some more hives this year. So really excited. 2026 is here, and spring is officially upon us. We'll see you at the next time.